why don't you go ahead and tell me like who you are, or I know who you are.
Yeah.
Nobody else does.
Right.
And so we need a reason to believe you. So like, what do you do? I don't even really know all that you do here.
Yeah.
So yeah, what do you do?
So I'm Kyle. We're at Deterra Farms right now in Beaver Creek. I am the facility manager, so I'm the head grower / manager of the facility. I don't really have like a specific title, but I've been growing for about 10 years, managing commercial facilities for about 7 or 8. So yeah, I've been doing this for a long time.
What defines a commercial facility?
Commercial facility is anybody that's putting out, I don't know, a lot of weight, I guess. Anybody that's doing it for retail, I would say.
Gotcha, like
or
legally,
black
like
market.
in the like whole cannabis industry.
Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah.
So you just oversee all of it?
Yep, I oversee everything.
It seems like a lot. Like when you think of growing weed, just like in your house or apartment or something, it's just like you like plant a seed, you keep it kind of going just like any other kind of house plant.
Yeah.
But when an operation like this, like there's so many dials and switches and hoses and timers and things, and you have a staff of how many people?
We've got 24 employees right now, I think.
Wow, including yourself?
Including myself.
Wow, okay, cool. So you oversee 23 people.
23 people, yeah, give or take. I mean, it always kind of fluctuates depending on what our needs are.
And that goes from like the seed all the way to the moment the weed leaves here and then is taken from who to where?
Yeah, so we do all of our own in-house cloning. We source genetics from trusted breeders. And so I oversee all of propagation, moms, all the vegetative growth, all the flowering, all of the back-end invoicing, bookkeeping. Well, I don't do a lot of the bookkeeping, but I help out when I need to. And then all of the tracking. We have to use a program called Metric, and so everything from seed to sale is tracked. And so I track everything on the farm side, on the cultivation side of that as well. And then, I do all the hiring, all of the firing, unfortunately, which is like my least favorite part about doing this.
Dang.
Yeah, and then all the scheduling. I mean, we have 7 flower rooms. We're about to put up our 8th flower room, 2 veg rooms, 2 mom rooms, a nursery, and then a staging room. And I oversee all of that. And then all of the post-harvest, so drying, trimming, curing, all that stuff. So scheduling all of that so that we never miss a beat and we never have a room down for more than like a day or 2 after harvest. It's a jigsaw puzzle, and it is
7 years you've been doing this too?
About 8 commercial, and then a couple years before that kind of as like a hobbyist grower.
How would you describe the size of this operation? Like whatever the biggest operation would be compared to like the smallest, like where does Deterra Farms fit on that scale?
As far as indoor farms, we're pretty fucking big.
Okay.
Yeah, we're pretty large. Outdoor farms obviously get way bigger. You just need a lot more real estate to do it, and you're only really growing flowering plants, and you're doing it once a year. So they're a lot bigger. But as far as indoor farms go, we're pretty big, and like I said, we're expanding right now too.
Cool.
So we have our 8th flower room coming up, and then we're gonna build a greenhouse to do all of our vegetative and our nursery stuff out there. And then we're gonna convert all of our veg space to flower space, and then eventually build another building. So this place will be about twice the size as it is right now in a couple of years. Yeah, it's
okay,
crazy.
Cool. Wow, so this is big. You're legit. This isn't just like hey, I got a friend who grows weed.
Yeah.
So like, you know what you're talking about.
Yeah, I mean, I'm just gonna put all the questions in ChatGPT anyway.
I might not even be able to fully comprehend some of the answers to some of these questions because some of these terms are over my head.
Right.
I'm not a botanical expert at all. So I'm gonna probably smile and nod for some of these, but it's good information for everyone to have. So.
Yeah, for sure.
So what's the deal with weed? Is it all the same? A lot of people will use the words sativa and indica. I'm a bud tender. I sell a lot of weed.
Yeah.
A lot of people will come in looking for a sativa or an indica, thinking that one will make them feel a certain way and one will make them feel a different way, or they avoid one because they know that that'll make them feel a certain way. Yeah. I've heard a lot of things like it's a botanical term, not a biochemical term. I kind of understand what that means. I don't know if that's fully true. Can you give us a little bit of a rundown?
Yeah, I can do my best. It's kind of a debated topic right now. As we're learning more about the plant, we kind of are learning that a lot of these old school tropes aren't all that accurate. But for me, calling something an indica or sativa is just going to make the effects of the plant a little bit more predictable to the person that's using it. And then for me as a grower, I know that if I grow a sativa, it's going to be a little bit taller, like what you see around us. The bud structure is going to be they're going to have smaller buds, longer internodal spacing between the buds, and they're usually going to have certain flavor profiles too. You're usually going to get more citrus with sativa strains. Indica strains are going to be a little bit more squatted, a little bit more earthy notes, maybe some like fruity kind of stuff going on. So for me, it's just something that kind of allows me to predict what the plant is going to grow like, so that I can have my team prune it, manicure it, train it in specific ways so that we're maximizing the yield. That's kind of how I approach it, but for a consumer,
like, can you make something a sativa or an indica, or is it just gonna be?
Yeah. So the main thing to remember is that everything that you see at a dispensary they're all hybrids. So like everything, they're gonna lean one direction or another, and based on the traits of the plant and the smell of the plant, people will classify them as a sativa or an indica.
Okay.
But that's really as deep as that goes, I think. Back when there were only landrace strains, and they were these genetics were selected based on the region they were growing in, I think those terms had a lot more weight to them. But
interesting.
Yeah, but because of everything that we consume here is grown inside, or if it is grown outside, it's in very specific regions in the United States, California, Oregon, some Washington, and that's basically it. Indica and sativa, everything that we smoke today is a hybrid of some sort.
Does the region like even matter? Like, is there a difference between Washington weed, Oregon weed, and California weed or Nevada weed?
I don't think so. For outdoor, I don't think that there is, because we're all kind of growing in the same region.
Okay.
The plants that we select to grow here, we select them here because they grow well here.
Gotcha.
But if you're growing a cannabis plant in Africa, those genetics are going to be completely different because the climate's completely different. And that's where all those landrace strains come from. Is like Africa, there's Asian landrace strains, there's South American landrace strains.
And when you say landrace strains, you mean?
I mean genetics that are selected over the course of hundreds of years of people farming that plant to do well in those climates.
Gotcha. So
like, they call that a landrace, yeah.
Are there examples that you can give, like specific strains?
Nobody's really doing. There's some craft farmers that are doing landrace strains indoors because you can kind of cater the climate to the plant, but not a whole lot of people are growing them. Typically, they have ridiculously long flower times. They have not that the bag appeal is not there. They're not commercially viable, and they're not marketable because everybody today shops on bag appeal. It's the first thing you see is like, what's it look like in the jar, and then you kind of go from there. So everybody's weed has to be purple. It's got to be frosty. It's got to have like specific bud structure and texture.
Do you agree with those things?
That's a good question. No, I don't. So, some of my favorite flower is not purple. Yeah. I like old school OGs, and they're always going to be lime green. You cannot get those to get purple at all, and they're typically not going to have insane bag appeal like a gelato or something, you know. But I find my favorite strains are not purple.
And so when you say bag appeal, you mean like the weed equivalent of curb appeal? So what it looks like sight unseen, just as soon as you look at it, I think it's good just because of how it looks. So like, for instance, this weed that I won't say what store it's from, but this strain called Apple Tarts, there's one that I've seen locally that has a really poor bag appeal. Yeah. And then we've seen your Apple Tarts, which actually has a really nice bag appeal. That's what we're talking about, bag appeal?
Yeah, for sure.
Okay, cool.
Yeah, I mean, it's what pops off on Instagram, you know?
And so
it's
here's
the same
a question.
kind of mindset.
Because, so the farm that has bad bag appeal, sometimes their plants look amazing. Like, I've seen the Instagram channels of some farms, and they'll post photos of the plants as they're harvested, or like in the state that they're in now here. Yeah. And it looks amazing. It looks like fire weed. But when I've bought that weed from that farm at a dispensary, the product looks like garbage. Like, what's the deal? Like, why doesn't it just stay nice? Like, why does it look good like this, but then sometimes the bag appeal, once it gets to the dispo, is bad.
It just looks like shit.
Yeah.
It starts to get like yellow and kind of oxidized and
sometimes it's yellow,
brown.
sometimes brown, sometimes it just looks like Sometimes when you get weed, like it'll look just like this in the dispensary, but sometimes it'll almost look indistinguishable from weed.
Yeah.
You know, it'll just kind of look like dirty,
just
like dirt clods, or like what's the deal there?
Usually, if it looks really good in the room, and then the finished product looks like shit, it's because something went wrong in the drying and the curing process. So if you bag up wet weed, let's say it's not quite dry enough, but you get more weight out of it if you buck it a little bit wet. Bucking meaning like remove the buds from the stems, get it ready to trim.
Okay.
And then you trim that wet weed and then you package it, you're stopping all the chemistry that's happening in that bud. And you're just packaging wet weed, and that moisture is gonna oxidize the flower and it's gonna turn brown. Trichomes are going to turn brown. It's going to start to get like a grassy or even like a pickle kind of smell to it. Sometimes it doesn't mute the terpenes at all. Sometimes it's still really loud, but it just looks like shit.
So what, I guess I'm speculating here and maybe trying to connect the dots prematurely, but I guess is the reason why someone would want to bag it up a little too wet is so that they could sell more, because it weighs a little more when it's wetter, or like what?
I mean,
would be
it
the
could
point
be
of doing
that for sure.
Like, wouldn't you want to wait a little bit longer?
I prefer to wait a little bit longer. I typically won't. Well, I mean, it's kind of, it's like a trade-off. If you buck it, trim it a little bit wet, you do get more weight, and the flower also, if you do it right, can have good shelf life. And if it's in transport for a long time, if you're like a black market grower, you want it to be a little bit wet. So that way when it gets to where it's going, then it's kind of at a nice place.
Interesting.
But it's not good for quality. It's always going to affect the quality, and it's just not, you're going to be left with an inferior product. So yeah, typically people do that. It could just be because they don't really know what they're doing, you know? Or like, we only harvest kind of like during the middle of the week, because if I harvest on a Friday and then my flower is perfectly dry the following Friday, I can't get all of that broken down and bucked until Monday. So if it stays in the dry room all weekend, then it'll be too dry. So sometimes growers are in a bit of a bind where they can't leave their stuff hanging and they have to get it down. If they don't, then it'll just be too dry. It could be dry rooms not being set up correctly. It could just be people not knowing what they're doing, which is a lot of what it is, I think, is just people not really knowing what they're doing.
And this seems like some process bottlenecks that can happen when you're dealing with a commercial operation like this, as opposed to just like if you're growing at home, you just dry it at your own pace. You don't grow the next thing until that one's done or ready or whatever. Whereas here you have like a timeline to keep and a schedule to keep and all that, and you have numbers and stuff that you have to keep so everyone gets paid and you can keep the lights on. And then in order to do that, you have to keep things growing and some things have to dry, and that's very interesting.
So when we harvest a room this size, we have 440 plants, and it takes all hands on deck to get it all broken down in 2 days. It takes us.
Wow.
So and that moment, that small window in the drying time where it's like almost there and it's too dry is very small. That
so you chop it down and then you let it hang to dry, and then you start to trim it.
Yes.
And then if you don't let it dry for long enough, if you don't wait it long enough while it's hanging there and you just start trimming it prematurely, that's when it holds a little bit more moisture, and that moisture over time oxidizes. And then it can make, depending on maybe the strain or the terpenes or whatever, is whether it might turn brown or yellow or...
And some strains just have a shit shelf life too. That's the other thing, is it might just be a little bit old.
Interesting.
And not stored properly. If it's stored in a hot room or it's stored like under lights, then it's gonna break down a lot quicker. Also, if you dry it too fast or you have your dry room too hot, then all of these things are gonna affect the quality at the end. And they're mainly gonna affect the shelf life. And it's just gonna start to turn brown and look oxidized and kind of shitty a lot quicker if you're not totally dialed. Like from propagation, like from cloning to harvest it's like about 16 weeks.
Okay.
And the dry time and the cure time is about 3. And those 3 weeks are way more pivotal to nail and like get right than anything else in the flower cycle.
Wow.
Because that's when you can fuck up the most. If you fuck up in the grow room for a day or two, it's gonna be fine. It's not gonna be that big of a deal.
Okay.
But if you fuck up during the drying and the curing, it could be a wash sometimes.
Because the growing, this part is just like kind of replicating nature, and then the rest of it is the part where like we kind of intervene to try to like make the plant do something what we want.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
How interesting.
Drying times.
That actually like brings me to one of the questions that one of my customers brought up, which is, are there specific strains that are more troublesome to grow than others? Like you were just saying before, some of them have a shit shelf life just no matter what. Are there, like, what are some trouble strains and why? Like what makes that harder to do? Because like, for instance, if you're talking about something technical like woodworking or skateboarding or something, trying to find a star with a telescope, it's hard because there's like these little things you have to finesse. So when it comes to like growing weed, what is it about the strains that make them hard to grow as opposed to like...
It depends on the strain. So what you guys see in the cameras is called Glitter Bomb. This is our second production run of it, and this one is just kind of lanky. You can see I guess better on your side, the buds are kind of hanging through the trellis.
I'll show some
They don't like to stay upright all that much, and they have a lot of foliage in the middle, and so this requires a lot of work in the rooms. So it's hard in that way. Other strains are just difficult to grow and they're finicky. We have a lemon cherry gelato right now that is a fucking nightmare. If you, it's such a bitch because you have to have the pH in the cocoa in a very, very, very small window with this specific strain, and if you drift too far up or too far down, then it just ends up really, really affecting the quality and the overall yield, especially of that specific cut. I've grown other strains that are fucking bulletproof. Like we have a strain right now called the Wolf. It does not matter what I do to that plant. It's gonna perform every time. It's always gonna be predictable, and it's always gonna be just fire every single time, no matter what I do. So I don't know what it is about certain strains. Some of them are just a bitch, and they're difficult and not fun to grow.
Is
but
the
people
candle
love
worth
it.
the flame on those?
On the gelato, it is. Yeah, that's one of our best strains. I'm actually testing a few different phenotypes of lemon cherry gelatos right now, and this one surpasses all of them, like significantly when we nail it. But I'm trying to find something a little bit simpler to grow because on a commercial scale, it's not the most fun thing in the world to grow hard shit.
That makes sense.
I mean, you could do it, and it's cool to flex, but
if it takes more hands to make it happen, then
exactly. Luckily, our team here, they're super good, and they catch stuff way before it's a problem, so it makes things a lot easier.
Heck yeah.
For sure.
How much do you rely on your team to be like your standard of eyes?
Dude, fully.
Yeah?
Yeah,
cool.
Fully. I mean, I'm barely in the rooms these days. I have an office job for the most part. So everybody that works here, they have to be fucking dialed every day and really good at their jobs, and they all are. So they're the ones that make it possible for sure.
Shout out to the Daytera crew.
Shout out.
Yeah, you guys keeping it real.
That's right. Can we pause for a sec?
Yeah, of course.
I'm gonna grab my sweatshirt. I'm kind of fucking cold. I'm starting to shiver a little bit. Trying to get these buds to purple. We got to turn those temps down.
How cold do you keep it in here?
Right now it's about 62, 64, somewhere in there.
Okay, yeah, it's
cold.
Sweater weather.
It's chilly for sure.
Let me make sure that that's not like stabbing into your throat. So speaking of temperature, actually, that probably brings us to one of our next questions, which is like, why does weed get purple sometimes? I've heard sometimes it's temperature. I've heard it's nitrogen. Is it food coloring?
It's food coloring.
It's food coloring. Just purple and...
We just dump it in, straight into the tanks.
That's what I thought. All right, cool.
We spray it on sometimes. We spray it on with the terps.
All right, cool. Yeah, is it nitrogen? Is it what is it? Yeah, what's the deal?
It's a variety of things. Some strains do it, some strains don't. Nitrogen does not have anything to do with weed turning purple. A lack of nitrogen is probably what people are talking about, but it doesn't. A lack of nitrogen though will start to fade the leaves and get you that really nice like fall kind of autumn color. But the reason they turn purple is there's a pigment called anthocyanin, and it's a flavonoid pigment that the plant releases to prevent freezing. And I don't really know how the fuck that works, like how a pigment is gonna prevent it from freezing.
Interesting.
But the plant does what it do, and if you lower the temperatures on some cultivars, they're gonna turn purple. And it probably has something to do with the climates that they originally came from. You know what I mean? Like way up the line in the breeding process to get to where we are now.
Yeah.
It probably has something to do with that. I'm not entirely sure.
Well, different color light light travels different colors of light travel at different speeds, right? Which makes different colors of light different temperatures. So
okay, I didn't know that. Yeah. That's why they have the Kelvin rating system or whatever.
Yeah, and I might be like butchering this because it's like probably some astrophysics shit. Some type of science that I don't actually know, but I'm pretty sure because this is why like prisms work, right? It just like breaks those like light. So that
interesting.
Is, as you were saying that, it made sense in my head because I do think that certain colors of light produce different like physical temperatures of heat, you know, and then so if the plant just evolves its own coat to prevent it from freezing,
that could be it.
It turns itself purple so that it doesn't freeze.
Yeah, and it's not as temperatures, also light spectrum will cause a plant to turn purple as well. So in our rooms, we have rooms that have LEDs, we have rooms that have old school HPS bulbs, and the HPS rooms are harder to get that fade out of the plant than the LED rooms, and that's all based on light spectrum.
Interesting.
Yeah, I never thought about it like that before though.
And does the color of the weed, does that affect it like chemically, or is it just the way that it looks?
Just the way that it looks.
Okay.
Yeah. I mean, if we keep the rooms hot, they're not going to turn purple at all.
Okay.
If we keep the rooms the same temperature from like start to finish, then we're going to get a finished product that is just green, which
it'll just be the color.
Yeah, it'd just be the color.
Oh,
yeah, it's no
interesting.
big deal. Yeah. But the fading of the leaves, on the other hand, you do want to pull nitrogen later in flower. And you want to increase your potassium and phosphorus, the things that like build the colas and the buds and things like that. You want to beef those up while you're not pulling nitrogen. And a mistake that a lot of people make, which goes back to your shelf life question, is a lot of growers will pull that nitrogen super early. And when they pull the nitrogen, there's also calcium in that nitrogen in the nutrient bottles that they're using or salts or whatever. And the plant cannot fight mold without calcium. So then you get like bud rot and shit like that. And all of this is just to chase white ash. That's all.
White ash.
That's all it is.
Ooh, give it to me. What is the deal with white ash?
White ash, man, is bullshit.
Okay, yeah.
It is a trope.
A lot of people want. A lot of people when they are asking me for weed, they're like, "I want that shit that burns white."
Yeah.
I think right. Yeah. So like, why do people want weed that burns white? Like, I don't
Listen to me. If you're buying weed and you're smoking weed, judge your weed off of the flavor and the smoothness, not off the color of the ash. The amount of times, man, that people have been like, man, this tastes so good. Oh, I love this strain. This joint's fucking smooth. Oh, the ash is black. It's fucking trash. No, it's not. You just said it wasn't, dude.
You just liked it, and then
you
looked
just
at
liked
the color
it.
of the ash, and you don't like it anymore.
Yeah.
Because like cigarettes produce like kind of a whitish gray.
Cigarettes are great for you. I don't know. If cigarettes are super good for you.
So what makes it burn white or black? What's gonna make that happen or not happen?
It could be a multitude of things.
So it's not just like a predictable thing.
No, it's not. But I mean, you can, in the same way that you can make plants turn purple, you can make ash turn white. And
does it matter how you burn it or what?
No, so it's how you flush the plant and how you get all the salts out of the cocoa or the rock wool or the soil or whatever you're using. But even doing that, not all strains are gonna have white ash. Some of the most fire strains out there are gonna have like gray or even like darker ash. And it's not an indication of quality at all. There's this guy named Mile High Dave, and he is like winning all the cups right now. He has this strain called Dante's Inferno No. 8, and we grew it here for a while. And this man flushes for like 3 days, and he's winning these tournaments or these like cannabis cups with this strain that I've never smoked his specific flower, but it's not burning bright white. It's just not. Because it's not that big of a deal.
Yeah.
And it's just one of these many tropes that have just survived the test of time from like closet grower days or like 70s fucking hippie days or wherever the fuck it came from. I don't know, but
interesting.
It's not a big deal if your ash burns a little bit.
It's kind of a
gray.
coincidence then. So if your ash, the color of your ash is a complete coincidence and not a correlation at all.
But here's the thing. Here's where it gets really funny to me as a grower is that a lot of people, they want to get that white ash. So they stop feeding their plants like 2, sometimes 3 weeks before they harvest it. And sure, their ash is going to be more on the lighter side for that genetic, but they're sacrificing the quality of the flower that they're growing.
That's what it sounds like, because it sounds like a very hands-on, meticulous, like, maneuver that you have to do in a timely time in order to get that and run the risk of creating an inferior product.
Yeah, I mean, it's like I just said about the nitrogen. If you pull nitrogen too early, or you pull everything out of that too early and you're just flushing with like water, the plant has nothing to protect itself. Yeah. And it's gonna, if you grow fat colas and you flush it for 2 weeks, they're gonna be full of mold. You're gonna break that cola open, it's just mold spores are just gonna fly into your face. But the ash is probably gonna burn white.
How often does it happen that that'll happen and moldy weed will make it onto the shelves of a dispensary?
You tell me that.
Oh, shit.
A lot, right? I would imagine. You guys probably find mold quite a bit.
I have found mold in weed. I've found, once I found, it almost looked like a tiny little spider web.
Oh, yeah.
Like it looked kind of like a webby
on the
little
outside
thing. It was like kind of like in like it was as I like kind of like broke it open a little bit, and and I went to like poke it. I thought it was like, it looked like maybe like a tiny little cobweb or a seed or something, and then I went to poke it and like orange like guts came out of it. It was like it was a bug or something.
Oh, what the
like
fuck? I don't know what that is. I mean, mold can sometimes get pretty
like pussy
bright
or something
colors.
Like that.
I don't know what the fuck that was.
I don't know either.
I don't know what the fuck that was.
I'm curious now.
How high were you in that?
Like regular.
Regular. I mean, listen, farms operate on such a razor thin margin that if a farm grows a room or harvests a room and they get mold on that, they're gonna try their best to get it all out and sell it. We absolutely will not fucking do that. Like, there's just no way. When I first started here, we had a strain called White Truffle Jokers, and Jokers strains are just notorious for molding. I don't know why that is, but it produces, I mean, like fucking forearm-sized colas, and when they're that big, it's going to be hard to prevent them from molding. And we had one room that molded like pretty fucking bad, and we ended up burning all of it in our burn pit outside.
I was gonna ask that, like, how much, so how much weed do you produce and how much of that gets onto the shelves of a dispensary versus gets wasted? And I was gonna say, what happens to weed that you can't sell? But
we've only thrown away that one harvest. We don't usually ever throw anything away here. Our weed's fire. We sell all of it.
If it's perfect, you don't have to waste it.
It's good.
Cool. That's good to know.
Yeah, we grow quite a bit. I can't say how much we grow, but it's a pretty good amount.
Yeah.
And yeah, I mean, we don't ever have bad runs at this point. And it's, again, goes back to our team.
Yeah.
They're fucking rock stars, dude. And Tyler's our flower hall supervisor, and Anna's our lead, and they both walk through these rooms every single day, twice a day. They look at everything. They're doing runoff tests of the cocoa to see what our EC and our pH is at. They're constantly monitoring everything in the environment, and they catch shit way before it's a problem.
Heck
so
yeah.
we don't ever have bad runs really like that.
So it's never like a if something goes wrong, it's like horribly wrong.
Yeah.
And that just doesn't happen here.
Nope, doesn't happen. Not to say that it won't, because at some point it probably will. We actually, no, I lied. I said we've only destroyed one harvest. We were in a bit of a pickle. We had to bring clones in from an outside source, and it happened like when I wasn't here. We have a microscope. We scope all of our genetics to make sure that there's no bugs on them and things that are going to get us in trouble later down the line. But this specific set did not get scoped because, like I said, I wasn't here. It was like after hours or some shit. And it actually went into this room. And we had a russet mite infestation in this room. And we had to kill everything that was in here. It was like week 5 or something. So it was pretty early, but still, that's like 80 grand. Just light it on fire. Yeah. Yeah, because we didn't scope our genetics. And lesson learned, we'll never ever do that again, obviously. We have a very, very, very stringent intake procedure now where we get the genetic, We cut a clone off of that, throw the medium away, throw everything away that came with the plant, just the clone, scope that clone under we have a badass microscope over there, and then we quarantine it, and then after we're done quarantining it for like 2 weeks, treating it, then we'll scope it again, and if it's still clean, then we bring it into the facility. And then that strain, that cut will then get tested twice before we do a production run like this.
Yeah.
So we'll test it, just one plant, just to see if it's total garbage. Because every plant that you test, you can't sell it. It's only one plant, right?
Sure.
So we just give it out as samples to our employees. And then if I'm impressed by that, then we'll do like one bench, like one of these tables of just that strain to see how it yields, to see how it does in the environment, and get more information from the plant. And then if it passes that phase, then we'll do a full production run of it. So it takes a long time to put shit in.
That's a lot of testing.
It's like 9 months usually from getting the genetic to doing a production run.
What is the testing like for like pesticides and metals and stuff? Is that something that you do? It sounds like something that you do in that phase before it ever even gets into here. It's not something that.
Yeah. So.
Yeah. What's that like?
We only test plants for hop latent viroid right now, which is it's a viroid that's just taking over facilities, and it's terrifying. And we had a lot of it here when I first started. So we'll always test cuts for that first. I mean, it can transfer from like you cut this plant with your scissors, and then you cut that one, and now boom, that plant's got hop latent viroid, and it's gonna
just from the scissor contact.
Just from the scissor contact. We switched from using aerocloners, which are like big tanks of water that mist the bottom of the cuttings, and then those roots will grow out of the cuttings and then drop into the water. It can spread in those tanks. So if you have one cut in a tank of 96 clones and that cut has hop, then everything that's in that cloner with it is gonna have it. So you just went from one to like a quarter of a room now has it. And you're not ever gonna see the symptoms of it in some genetics until it's like in flower, like late in flower. And then you just have no trichome production, no resin. It just looks like shit and is dudded out. And
it looks like a male plant or something.
There's still buds, but they just look like shit. So we test everything for hop when we get it, and then we also test our moms for hop before we cut a run off of those moms, just to make sure that nothing is leaving our nursery that has it.
Gotcha.
And then as far as pesticide testing, that's all done after, post-harvest. We bucket, trim it, package it, and then the testing company comes, they'll pull a sample, and then they'll take that to the lab, test it for terpenes, cannabinoids, heavy metals, pesticides, and all that stuff.
Cool.
Yeah.
When you get the results for testing things like cannabinoids and THC and all that, what is the deal with the discrepancy between the total cannabinoid percentage number and and the THC? Because usually those are different numbers and THC is lower. Yeah. And then also so like I've had this, it's hard for me to understand the percentage thing. Some dispensaries and some places will measure THC content with milligrams. I've seen that in cartridges, I've seen that in edibles, I've seen that in concentrates, and sometimes I've seen it in flour, but usually I'll see percentages with flour, and I'm not sure what it means, because it's not as clear as like alcohol by volume. You know, if I take out all the alcohol in a glass of wine that's 12%, it'll be 12% smaller, because it's alcohol by volume. So give me the rundown on
it's kind of similar. It's kind of similar. It's also by volume. So they'll put the sample, grind it up really well, throw it into columns, and so that the only thing that reacts with the medium that's in that column is going to be the THC, and then they'll test that. I don't know exactly how they do it. There's like 4 or 5 different ways that you can test potency. But as far as total THC versus total cannabinoids, THC is only one cannabinoid. There's like a plethora of them. There's tons, and they're constantly discovering new ones. So
what does that even mean? How are they discovering new ones? Keep going. I didn't mean to cut you.
No, you're good. I'm not entirely sure, honestly. I'm not super interested in that cutting edge part of the industry. I'm more into like growing the plant. I don't know that much about that whole realm of things, but like Delta 9 is one that's recently discovered. We've known about CBN for a while, CBG. As we discover more cannabinoids, that total cannabinoid number, I think, is probably just going to keep going up.
That makes sense.
And people really only care about THC, so that's the number that you're looking at.
And that's why that one tends to stay around 28, 30% if you're in like Oregon or so.
Yep. Do you guys put total cannabinoids or total THC on your jars in your shop?
We put total cannabinoids and THC.
Oh, so you put both of them?
Yeah.
Both those
so
numbers?
You can see the THC and the total cannabinoids.
Nice. I like that.
Yeah. Interesting. And so where do cannabinoids come from? Like how do we get certain ones like CBN? Like can you deliberately produce certain cannabinoids?
Yeah, for sure.
And avoid others or?
Yeah, CBG is a big one right now that breeders are trying to select for.
Mm-hmm.
So there's a couple farms that I know of in Oregon that are growing like 1 or 2 high CBG varieties.
Okay.
And they've just selected that plant and they just know that it's going to do that. They probably test everything and they're always looking out for, this plant produced a ton of this cannabinoid, or this one's really high in THC or whatever. So also I think it's CBG. If you harvest a plant really early, then you're going to have more of that. If you harvest a plant really late, you're going to have more CBN.
Oh, okay.
As the THC breaks down into different cannabinoids, you can get different.
Oh, that's what happens? It's the THC breaking down?
I think so. I honestly don't know that
That's
much.
fine.
Don't listen to anything I just said. I didn't put that one into ChatGPT, unfortunately.
Dude.
A processor or like somebody that's really into extracts is going to be able to have a much better answer to that question.
Can people like juke the stats on the THC numbers and their
Fuck
testing
yeah,
results?
buddy.
How do you do that?
Oh, hell yeah, yeah.
If I wanted to like really make people like think that it's tested high, what do I do? I first I just have like my like brother or sister or someone start a testing company, right?
I'll tell you what you
Nepotism
do.
first.
You give your testing person a fat tip.
It's that simple, huh? It's not as regulated as like the FDA
honestly,
with alcohol, is it?
No, it's definitely not. And the unfortunate part about it is you don't actually really have to do anything because testing companies are incentivized to put out high numbers. So
because if I make your weed look good, so that other people are going to buy your weed if it's 40%, then that means you're going to get and if the other testing company only tests it at 32%,
then 24, which is probably
people
more
are
realistic.
buying your strain at 24%, they're buying it at 40.
Yeah, well,
so
above that,
you're going to test
it's
with
if
me.
you're testing, if I test my flower with you and it comes back at 22%, I'm never going to test with you again. Like, it's unfortunate, but that's the way it is. I mean, it's a competitive industry. It is what it is. I will tell you right now.
So that's its own competitive industry.
Oh yeah, for sure. Yeah, every grower knows your blueberry muffin did not hit 40%. It's not real, dude. It's straight up not real. But you have to play the game. It's part of the fucking thing, dude. It is what it is. It's a gross part of the industry, and luckily it happens on the testing side, and I don't really deal with it. But I do definitely play the system a bit. In that, I mean,
you're gonna pick a good tester.
I'll test with 2 companies every time. I'll do R&D testing with 2 companies, and then I'll do my full testing with the company that I've been using. And this other company, if their tests are to go low and this other company is higher, I'll be like, hey, they tested 40 there, dude.
That's fair. No, because you got at the end of the day, you got to sell your product.
And that is only because consumers aren't educated on what THC, how it actually affects them. That's like the biggest thing, and that's probably you deal with this shit day in, day out at the dispensary. Like, don't shop by the numbers, shop with your nose. You're gonna be a lot happier.
Shop with your nose. Yeah, that's what I try to tell people. And correct me if I'm wrong, but if people are smelling weed, like if you smell weed that smells good and you smell it and you're like, wow, that just as soon as I smelled it, I'm like, yes. Yeah. You're gonna smoke it and probably have a similar reaction. Whereas contrary, if you smell weed and you're like, I don't like the way this smells. Yeah. Similarly to if you open the fridge and smell some milk that smells like shit and you drink it, you're gonna be like, no, I don't like that.
Not gonna like that milk.
I don't like that either.
No,
And then correct me if I'm wrong about this too. If like say I smell a jar of weed and I'm like, whoa, that's dank, and then I hand it to you and you smell the jar of weed and you're like, I don't really smell anything at all. Is that because the terpenes that I'm smelling, I'm more sensitive to, and you're not?
I think so.
Okay.
I mean, that's what makes sense to me.
It makes sense to me too.
Yeah. And I don't know what it is about following your nose. Like for me, GMOs, I fucking hate them. They smell so bad to me. They smell like feet.
Yeah.
Dude, I hate it.
A lot of people have that reaction.
It's gross, but some people love GMOs.
Yeah.
I don't really like the candy strains that much. To me, it's just not what weed's supposed to smell like. I like old, like I said earlier, old OGs, like Skywalker OG or something like that. Because I love that like piney gas. I love that. And I mean, as I get older, I get more anxiety when I smoke weed. Those OGs don't fuck me up so bad.
Heck yeah.
You know,
That's good. As I've smoked more and more weed, they all tend to kind of feel like the same-ish. I feel like I might even have like setting might have to do with it a little bit too.
Yeah.
Like if I, and dosage, you know, that matters too, because it also seems like some of the strains that cause people anxiety are also the ones that are prescribed for anxiety. You know, like things like sativas are often used to like treat anxiety, but also are the ones that people say gives them paranoia.
Yeah.
So
I have that experience with like really citrusy strains.
Yeah.
I get a little anxious.
Or whatever.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah. I think so, yeah. But yeah, I mean, to put a bow on that real quick.
Yeah.
I think that the lack of understanding of THC numbers, it's driving this gross part of the industry forward.
Yeah.
Where, I mean, testing companies, how do you think they feel? I don't even have to test the weed. They have to do that. They have to know that their business is riding on the numbers that they put out. And if they go too high, then they're going to get audited by the OLCC. If they go too low, then nobody's going to test with them. So they have to find this like middle ground.
So interesting.
And it's like really easy to, I mean, listen, a testing company can put whatever number they want on your shit.
Sure.
If you test it a certain way, or you're like not following the procedures exactly, you're like, oh, I'll give it a few more seconds over here, and then you're gonna get a different number. And so,
and it's
yeah,
not regulated.
It's not really. I mean, it is to an extent, but
by
not,
the OLCC, which sets their own standard, I guess.
Yeah.
But, like, because you said they would get audited if it was too high.
Yeah.
There can be a suspicious number, but.
Yeah.
But it's not like the FDA controls things like alcohol.
Yeah. Right.
And medicine and stuff like that, where like you can't sell Tylenol that says 200 milligrams if it's not 200 milligrams.
Yeah, exactly.
There isn't going to be like, oh, this 200 milligram thing of Tylenol is actually 194, but we call it 200.
Yeah.
That's never going to happen.
Yeah, I mean, no, it's not. It's absolutely not. And if people start, one thing I love about Oregon is you can smell everything. You can't do that in other states. So you guys are we're all blessed to live in a state where you can smell everything.
Because that's how you have to buy it.
If you just don't look at the number and you just look at how it looks structure-wise, does it look healthy, and you smell it and you like the smell, I challenge everybody that watches this, just do that next time you go. If you're one of those people that's like shops by numbers, shop with your nose one time. Don't even pay attention to the THC number at all, and see how much you like that flower and see how it actually affects you. Because if you smoke 38% fucking blueberry muffin with 1% terps, and then you turn around and you smoke a 22% strain with like 4.5% terps, that second flower is going to get you way higher. It's going to get you way more lit. Yeah, and then another thing, if you're not high enough, the beautiful thing is you can just smoke more. If you're 38%
dosage
weed
matters.
Doesn't get you high enough, then just smoke another bowl of it, dude. You'll be high.
We talked a little bit about what unhealthy buds look like.
Yeah.
What is a good looking bud? What are some like things to look out for that would be good? I've seen weed that has like super frosty, but I've seen some that isn't, but it's still good. Yeah. I've seen some with the hairs. I don't really know what those are.
Yeah. So you want to look at the color. Not what color it is, but like how vibrant is the color of it.
Oh, okay.
Some strains are never going to get that vibrant, which sucks for those strains. Probably shouldn't grow them, but like for instance, this glitter bomb is really, really bright, and you saw the finished product. I showed it to you. It's still very vibrant. That's a plant that was dried and cured properly. Cool. And we're not sacrificing the quality in our post-harvest procedures, right? So when you get it to the shop, it's in the jar, it should still look bright. You want to see those orange hairs sticking out of the bud. You don't want to see them brown. If they're brown, that's probably not a good sign. If the flower looks brown, is also not a good sign.
What about like denseness? Like if it's dense or fluffy, does that matter?
Yeah, I think that's mostly just probably personal preference.
Okay.
More than anything else. Like all of our stuff has different textures and you know.
So I've had some weed that like an eighth could fill the palm of my hand.
Yeah, for sure. No, this glitter bomb.
That doesn't really make
in a bag, it's like a quarter of the bag. But we have another strain called Tramp Mints that's fucking amazing.
Yeah.
But it'll fill up that whole bag just because it's not as dense.
Wow.
And it's still a really good,
cool.
really good strain, but it's just not as dense.
Sweet.
Yeah, that's what I usually look for at least. And what are pistils?
What are pistols?
What are pistils? The red hairs.
Oh, they're called pistols.
They're called pistils. Pistils. Pistils.
Like
pistils.
Okay.
Yeah.
And do they contribute to the high? Is it just a looks thing too?
They do contribute to the high only because they have trichomes on them.
Oh, okay.
But the purpose that they serve, they're the female sex organ of the cannabis plant. So those hairs are sticking out of the bud, and when that male pollen sac opens up and spreads its seed into the environment, those pistils will capture that pollen. It'll stick to them, and then the plant will grow around that pistil, and the pistil will still keep growing out. And that where that pistil is pollinated, and now the calyxes have covered it up, that becomes a seed pod. So that's where your seeds are going to come from. It's going to impregnate the plant that way.
Fucking horny.
Right? You know, the crazy thing too is if you push plants too far or you stress them out too much, female plants can actually impregnate themselves and turn into hermaphrodites. Yeah. They shoot out these little banana-looking ribbons of pollen, and they'll self-pollinate. The plant's saying, fuck, I'm dying. I gotta reproduce. I gotta create progeny to carry on my genetic.
Oh my gosh.
And they'll impregnate themselves.
If that's not a metaphor for the times. Are males just useless?
Male plants, listen.
Can you do anything with them?
You don't need a male plant to create seeds, but you do need a male plant to create strong genetics. Okay. You need that to create like fire strains. So selecting males is the same as selecting female plants. Like I select based on a list of criteria, and I'm only going to grow something if it like checks all the boxes.
Right.
Breeders are looking for the same thing in their male plants. They're looking for like vigor. They're looking for pollen color, the smell, tons of different. I know about breeding, but I'm not like an accomplished breeder at this point. But yeah, I mean, they're selecting male plants based on the traits they have, so that they can cross that with a female plant, and then those two traits sometimes will coalesce to create a perfect phenotype of that.
So you could still get like you don't need males, but if you want like good weed, you do.
Yeah, you do. And also if you pop a seed that from a plant that herms or like turns into hermaphrodite, the chances that seed is then going to hermaphrodite is way higher.
Is that almost a good thing?
No. Oh. You're gonna get seeded weed.
Oh yeah, because then it'll just keep happening.
Yeah, just keep happening.
The seeds in there.
Yeah, it'll just produce a really unstable genetic.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Do the names mean anything? Is there just like a guy that comes up with names? Or
yeah.
Because sometimes it'll be like Durban Runts, and it's like, okay, well, Durban Poison was a strain once, and Runts was a strain once. Did you guys just put those together?
Yeah. So names are fucking arbitrary.
I figured as much.
For the most part. So for instance, at the last farm that I worked at, we created this strain called Island Boy, and we named it Island Boy because the head nugs, like the top colas of the plant, would calyx out, produce those really long fingers like all over the top of the bud, and it reminded us of the Island Boys' hair. And so we named it Island Boys. It also had like a Tropicana kind of nose to it, so it just seemed it seemed perfect.
Yeah.
Other times, you know, I bred a strain called Margie's Mimosa. It was a Sunday brunch cross, which is a mimosa lineage.
Yeah.
And I named it Margie's Mimosa because the owner of the company's name, his mother's name was Margie, and she passed away, and so wanted to like, you know, nod to her, and it made his dad really happy, made him really happy. So yeah, I mean, other times, Forbidden Runts, or sorry, you said Durban Runts.
Durban Runts or something.
A lot of the time it's going to be that.
Yeah.
A lot of the time it's going to be that. Also, breeders are putting out packs now that, like seed packs now that it's just called what the cross is. Like we're growing a platinum lemon cherry gelato cross with this glitter bomb. And on the seed pack that we got, it just said Platinum Lemon Cherry Gelato X Glitter Bomb. You figure out what the name is.
Yeah. So it's not as fun of a job. It's not like, because a lot of people will be like, I want that job. I want to be the guy that just names all the strains. It's not like Adam and Eve picked by God to name all the animals in the Garden of Eden.
Yeah, nope.
Okay, well.
I mean, listen, breeders have kind of strayed away from calling strains like ridiculous fucking names, like dog shit. You know what I mean?
Cheetah piss.
Yeah, cheetah piss, unicorn poop. we're growing up now. We're like moving away from that type of thing.
Yeah.
I think that naming a genetic based on its lineage makes sense.
I think maybe even naming it just based off of like when it came out. Like this weed is called March 4th, 2024.
Yeah, that
I don't
rolls
know.
off the
You'll
tongue.
never get it again.
Yeah.
Trust me.
Yeah.
All right, so one more question. Why does Snoop Dogg microwave his joints?
Because he's high as fuck. Don't microwave your joints, kids.
Why? Like, do you think that does anything? Have you heard of this?
I don't know why anybody would ever do that. No, I have not heard of that.
Never heard
I
of
have no
this?
fucking clue why he would do that. Yeah. Snoop is on some fucking next level shit, or he's just really high.
He's in his own world. We should be maybe worried about him.
Yeah, I think so. I think so. Yeah. He was like Snoop Lion for a minute.
Yeah.
And he has like his own podcast where he does like companion podcasts for sports events and shit.
Doing some shit with Martha Stewart too.
I mean, listen, maybe he's powerful because he microwaves his weed. I'll try it.
Try it.
Yeah.
See. Yeah. I'll try it too.
Get a warm joint.
I'll try it too. It's just like a cookie or something. It feels nice in your fingers or something. I don't know. All right, well, I wish that had a cooler answer, but all right.
Me too.
Yeah, dude. That's. I guess that'll put a bow on it then.
Cool. Fuck yeah.
Thanks
Awesome.
for chatting with me.
Yeah. Absolutely.
Yeah. Until next time.
Fuck yeah.